Yo, what's good, y'all? It's James here. And for this video, I want to start a new series on my channel, which I will call Ranked. Basically, the premise of the series is that I will take an artist whose music I really enjoy and I will rank their discography. So, when I say discography, I mean the albums that are on streaming services, specifically Spotify. So, I know with some artists, they have projects from like earlier in their career that could technically be counted as part of their discography, but they're like harder to find, or maybe they're like technically unreleased, and I kind of want to stay away from those because I think when people say an artist's discography, they usually focus on like what is easily accessible and what is more well known. So, like for example, for this one, Isaiah Rashad, I'm not gonna include Pieces of a Kid or For the Vibers in this because they're not as like well known. And I feel like when people talk about his discography, they focus on the three albums I'm going to talk about in this video. So, yeah, I just want to include that. But yeah, so this is the start of a new series, Ranked. I'm starting it with Isaiah Rashad because, as I mentioned before, he's my favorite artist, and I think his albums, they all mean a lot to me. And I think ranking them and saying what I like about them, and maybe at points critiquing them, I think will be a perfect way to start the series and continue going forward. So yeah, that's it. Without further ado, let's get into it. The House is Burning is Isaiah Rashad's most recent project, and it is a really good project. I really enjoy this project. It has an energy to it that I find very warm and like kind of infectious. It has more of a southern kind of vibe to it, which I think was intentional. Obviously, Isaiah, he's from Tennessee, so that southern sound is kind of what he came up on. So he's implementing more of it in his music now, and I think that's really really good. It is probably his least lyrical project, which I saw some people kind of turned off by. But to me, I don't really mind that because I think this album is more about like the energy of it and like how it makes you feel as opposed to what it's saying all the time. That's not to say there's not good lines in it because there is good lines and good lyrical performances, but I really think just the vibe and the energy of the album is what sells it and what makes it as good as it is. Because this is a really really good project. I think it was sort of underappreciated when it came out, and I think part of that is just the standard Isaiah has set for himself. Because his past two albums, obviously, I have them ranked above this, and I do think they are better. But the gap between them isn't that large, and I still think this is a very, very formidable project. And Isaiah really hasn't missed with his albums. This is a really good album, and I'm really happy to see him in this stage in his life because he seems kind of happy. He's more self-reflective here, and in general, it's a really really enjoyable project to listen to. And I think if you're gonna start anywhere with Isaiah Rashad, this might be a good jumping off point. And I think in general, it's a very appealing album for like more mainstream audiences than some of his other two works. I think it's more accessible, so I think it plays that role very well. And yeah, overall, it's a really, really good project. I rank it third just because Isaiah's standards are so high, like I mentioned, but it's still a dope project. The House is Burning is awesome, and it is third place here for me. The Sun's Tirade. It's kind of controversial ranking Isaiah's top two projects. I see a lot of people go either way with it, and for me, The Sun's Tirade is number two. Which, if you know Isaiah's discography, that means you know what number one is, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's focus on The Sun's Tirade. The Sun's Tirade is such a dope project. It came out in 2016, which was a fantastic year for music. I feel like everyone knows that, especially if you're in the hip hop bubble. And even in that stack year, this album was a highlight. This is a fantastic project. Top to bottom, it has tracks that hit almost every time you listen to them, and tracks that hit even in different situations, different feelings, different emotions you're having. There's a track for that, whatever you're feeling. And just in general, this album, from the features, from Isaiah himself, from the sounds, the production, everything about it is just amazing. It's beautiful. It really is a very, very special project. Even the cover art is one of my favorites in hip hop. Like, just everything about this project is fantastic. I really, really love it. It has my second favorite Isaiah Rashad song on it, which is "What's Wrong." That is the one with him, Kendrick, and Zakari. Zakari does great with the vocals in the background, and then Kendrick's verse is absolutely phenomenal. One of his best feature verses, in my opinion. And Zay also kills it on that song. That's a beautiful track. That really, if you're gonna look at Isaiah Rashad as like and prove to someone he's a dope rapper, I think that's one of the first tracks you go to because he absolutely kills it. So does Kendrick. It's a fantastic song. And there's so many fantastic songs on here. There's that one. There's Free Lunch, which is one of my personal favorites as well. Park is fantastic. It's a hell of a banger. Rope/Rose Gold by George is a fantastic outro. It was my second favorite outro after Happy Birthday to You, which is the House of Burning outro, but it's still a dope outro. And it's such a good project. And I feel like it also has a good kind of like feeling to it, similar to the House is Burning, but it's less warm. I think it's more of I don't know how to describe it. It's more of a cool kind of chill vibe to it than the House is Burning, but it's equally as satisfying to listen to for me. and it's just such a enjoyable album from top to bottom. I really don't see any skips on this album. The only one that could arguably be a skip to me is like "Don't Matter," but even then, sometimes that hits. So it's a great album, great project. Highly recommend if you never checked it out. Definitely go check this out. And for me, it's Isaiah's second best, although it's very very close to being number one. So now we've reached number one, and for me, Isaiah Rashad's best album is Sylvia Demo. Sylvia is a special project for me personally. It's the first album I think I really looked at to listen to when life was getting hard and stuff like that, and just getting through tough times. And I think everyone has a piece of music like that if they're really invested in music. And for me, that is what Sylvia Demo is. And even outside of that lens of just being emotionally connected to it, it's just an objectively fantastic piece of music. On this project, I think Zay is rapping the hardest he ever has in terms of lyrical ability and just flows and just cadence and all that. I think this is the most potent Zay is on any of his tracks. It's less of the vibey kind of chill Zay that you get on the other projects. Like I mentioned, there's less of that, and it's more just pure rapping. And I think that really works for me. That's not to say I don't like vibey Zay. I like that Zay about as much as anything. But when he's really, really going hard and really, really just rapping, it's a fantastic thing to hear. And that's what he does on this album. He does it and he absolutely kills it. And it's not just him either. Features throughout this project are fantastic. Mike DaVinci on Brad Jordan. Him and Zay got multiple songs together, and this is a fantastic one. It's not my favorite song by them as a duo. My favorite song by them is 40 Ounce, which is awesome. But in terms of this album, they have Brad Jordan together, and they both absolutely kill it. It's a dope song and a dope tribute to Scarface, who was a fantastic rapper out of the South, someone who I'm sure influenced Zay. Outside of that song, there's also the outro to this album, which is Shot You Down. It's Zay, J Rock, Schoolboy Q, all TD, and they are going absolutely crazy on this song. It is one of the hardest outros I've ever heard. A fantastic song. It's not my favorite outro by Zay. Honestly, of the three albums, it might be my least favorite just because I like the chillness of Happy Birthday to You and By George, but I still absolutely love this song. And if I need to get hype, it's one of the first songs I go to. It's fantastic. And outside of the pure rapping, there's also features by SZA and Jean Doe. For SZA, there is West Savannah and Ronnie Drake, both of which are amazing tracks. West Savannah was also one of the first Zay songs I came to know and really appreciate. It's an awesome track, fantastic. It's like one of those songs that you just kind of sit with, and it makes you want to just like lay back and look at stars or something like that. It's just such a enjoyable listen, and it's a heavy song, but it's also absolutely beautiful. And then we have Ronnie Drake, which for its part is a conscious rap track. Zay is very socially conscious on this song. He's talking a lot about race, especially for him, what it's like coming up in America as a black man. And just the way he conveys the message is really well done. His verses are great. His lyricism is awesome. The flow is nice. The wordplay is good. And then the production on top of that is great. I really enjoy this beat. So for his part, everything's awesome. And then SZA comes through and does her part really well too. She sings the hook. Her voice is amazing as always. And just these two have great chemistry. They really never miss together. And this is a really, really dope song that conveys an important message. I really enjoy hearing Zay be socially conscious in his music. He doesn't do it all the time, but when he does, it's usually fantastic. And Zay is very aware of himself and the world he's in. And I think he absolutely kills it here. And then for the John Doe feature, that's on Menthol. And Menthol is one of my favorite songs, period. I love Menthol. It took a while for it to like grow on me. I mean, I always liked it, but it was never one of my favorite songs on this album until I like have been going back recently and listening to it. And Menthol is awesome, man. It's beautiful. It's the John Doe's part singing, like I would say, kind of the hook is fantastic, and then Zay's verses are some of the best on the album. It's just a fantastic song. And then I also want to talk about my favorite song on this album, my favorite song by Zay in general, which is Heavenly Father. Heavenly Father is one of the most relatable and vulnerable tracks I've seen from any rapper, period. Zay on this track is incredibly open about his relationship both with God and with his own actual father. And he's also open about the problems he feels with himself, the depression, the suicidal thoughts, the reliance on drugs to escape those feelings. And it's a song that I think a lot of people can relate to, at least parts of it. And I think the way Zay presents himself is just so honest and real. And I think that's one of the things that makes it such a good listen. And I think it's such an important song for people, myself included. I know, like, when I look back at this album and I think about the songs that helped me throughout life, this is like the main one. I absolutely adore this song. I think it's an important piece of music, and it's absolutely beautiful. Uh, it's a heavy song, but I would definitely recommend it. It's fantastic. And yeah, this album is just it's a really special piece of music. It's beautiful. It's one of the best albums I've ever heard. It's my favorite album I've ever heard, and I really, really recommend it to anyone who's trying to get into Isaiah Rashad or really hip hop in general. I think it's a quintessential rap album, and it's underappreciated. Definitely, to me, number one, Isaiah Rashad project, and well, my all-time favorite and one of my all-time best. So yeah, that was my ranking of Isaiah Rashad's albums. He's my favorite artist, and this is how I feel about his music. I love it all. As I said, I praised every single one of his albums. He's fantastic. And that was the start of a new series. Hopefully, I'm gonna continue this as time goes on. I don't know who I'm gonna do next, but I knew I had to start with Zay just because he's my guy. And if anyone feels differently about how I rank the albums, feel free to comment. Be respectful about it. Obviously, music's super subjective, so if you have a different opinion, that's totally fair. But just being cool about it. But yeah, man, I appreciate y'all checking it out. If y'all stuck around this long, and yeah, much love for real. Peace.